Welcome to Beaches Watch. May I introduce the president of Beaches Watch, Sandy Gold.
Ed makes this like a circus, I don't know why, but anyway. Unfortunately, my voice is not as loud as his, so thank you, Ed, for helping to get things going. My name is Sandy Golding. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. As Ed said, I'm president of Beaches Watch. For those of you who may not know about Beaches Watch, we are a citizens group that was founded back in 2004. So we are 10 years old as of this year. And our focus is, thank you, Curtis. Our focus is educating and engaging citizens in the issues that come before our local governments here at the beach, because we want to preserve the wonderful quality of life that we have here.
What about local, they come before Jacksonville too?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
But you live here, you're part of us. Okay. Before we get started, since Bill had to speak up there, let me introduce some of our elected officials that we have here. We have Bill Gullifer, who's the Jacksonville City Council president. And then also from Atlantic Beach, we have Mayor Carolyn Woods. Of course, we have Mayor Charlie Latham from Jacksonville. And then we also have from Neptune Beach, Scott Wiley, City Council. So I want to thank you guys. Each of the beaches is represented, so that's really good. And I want to just make a few announcements real quickly, and then we have a quick little sidebar that Curtis Loftus is going to do before we get to our speakers, and lovely George Forbes, who's smiling, and we'll introduce you in a minute. Want to mention a few things. I hope you got an agenda when you came in, because it has some information that we hope you guys will take with you. On the back is contact information for all the elected officials for our beaches communities. And then also want to just point out a few things on, okay, Eileen has got them over here at the table, so if you need one, be sure to pick one up. But the information on the back for the contacts for the elected officials, it's great, because if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, we encourage you to talk to our local officials, because they are very accessible and always very helpful. Want to let everybody know that Jacksonville Beach is having a retail study workshop on Monday, June 9th, at 6 p.m. at the City Council Chambers. This will be the first time we will hear from the consultants who are doing the retail study for Jacksonville Beach, so it should be interesting, and we encourage people to attend that. Atlantic Beach is having a charter review committee meeting on Thursday, June 12th at 5 p.m. at their commission chambers, so we hope people will plan to attend that. And then there's also a special workshop of the City Commission on the Human Rights Ordinance, June 19th at 5 p.m. in the commission chambers. And then also for the candidates that we have here, and I see several candidates here, we have a candidate training that Beaches Watch does every year. We are very pleased to have the Duval County Supervisor of Elections come out to the beach, so he brings his dog and pony out here so that our candidates here at the beach don't have to drive downtown to learn about the things that candidates need to know when they're campaigning for local elections. So we encourage you guys. Now, Scott, I don't know, I will send you an email about it as well if you'd like to attend. And we don't have the location finalized, although George has offered Jacks Beach City Hall, so we may be doing it there just to let you guys know. I'll give you a heads up. And then also, I'll continue to remind you that we have a 10-year anniversary celebration planned for Saturday, September 27th from 6 to 9. We hope you'll mark your calendar and plan to join us to help us celebrate the 10-year milestone for Beaches Watch. And then, as always, we encourage you to join Beaches Watch. It's only $10 for individuals, $15 for families, and it just helps support what we're doing in the community. And then let you know that the July meeting is going to be a really good meeting. We did this last year. It's a Beaches 101 meeting, and we'll have the city managers from the 3 beaches talking about the budgets, a little bit of the prior year's budget, and then talking about the coming year's budget and some of the things that they think are important for the coming year, and will help us get a better feel for what is going to be happening in this budget session that's going to be going on starting in the August timeframe. So we hope you'll plan to attend that. It's going to be Wednesday, July 2nd at 7 p.m. and it'll be here in the community room. So now I'd like to, Curtis, I don't know, Curtis Loftus is, for anybody who may not know Curtis has the Curtis Group here in Jacksonville Beach, and he is a board member for Beaches Watch, and he has decided to present some ideas.
We decided.
Yeah, well, actually, he has come up with some ideas for some possible new logos for Beaches Watch. So since it's our 10-year anniversary, we're kind of like, wow, let's freshen up Beaches Watch a little bit maybe. And so Curtis has some ideas he'd like to share with everybody just to get some initial feedback, and then we'll move to our speakers. So I'll let you have the floor.
And why I think I'm on the board is really a request from Georgette, and she knows my background in advertising design and my passion for the beaches community, and she had just done a lot of the work for Beaches Watch, just organizationally setting some things in place with communication and materials and that sort of thing. And now I'm there kind of looking at identity, and we'll look at the website, and we'll be doing some other things, but I can actually address those and hopefully get them done. So anyways, we're not messing around with the logo just to mess around with the logo. Sometimes people do that, and it's kind of ridiculous. This is really, that's the logo right now, and everyone is familiar with it. And I think it's actually a pretty strong logo. It works real well. It kind of reminds you of those stickers that are the car decals when you're come into a city, and it's just real simple, bright yellow with black type. The problem with the logo is it's got a lot of information in it, and that usually is a challenge for folks, especially when we're thinking about something that has to be reduced down sometimes, maybe even used. One day they may try to embroider the thing or put it on a cap, and it's fine at that size, and it has all the information in it, and it's actually well done. But we're just now engaging the board, and I'm involved in some of that, and we've done some design work, and we've had probably a couple meetings with conversations, and yeah, the last meeting we had, let's bring it to this group. We'll do it real quick, and I need some help. We'll have banners, 2 banners. So I'm going to show you also, this is kind of interesting. This is typical of what happens with business. They, because there's no one really controlling the brand and sort of this identity, stuff happens over a period of years, and you see overlap with things, like a logo that was designed maybe 10 years ago on a shirt. If you look at the shirt, it's got the old Beaches Watch logo on it. It actually shows up in some of our literature still, and that looks like it was less than one, and that's Italian. So it looks like to me it was a fish, a couple fish, and this eye symbol, and then big type though that says Beaches Watch, and it's kind of a fun logo, but that was done, and then I think this replaced it, correct? And now we're talking again. And hopefully what we do is we come up with something that everyone loves. It's real simple, it's eye-catching, memorable, and all those things, and we can formally introduce it one day. So that's that logo. It's a poor print of it. Van? So at this, and now the reason I'm doing it this way instead of big projection stuff, you get to see what happens when this logo goes down in size.
Right.
So that's what we're kind of dealing with right now. I want to be able to design something that we can use all sizes. So band 2. This is really kind of where we're at. It's a symbol. I don't have a big display of the type right now, but we're just trying to separate out symbol and type and see if we can't, do something that's a little more friendly. What I think happens with that logo is it kind of has a utilitarian sort of quality to it, and you know, we're hoping we can design a logo that's, we can, lack of a better word, friendly. So, and then I just have one other, and that's this one. And again, we have not come to a resolution, so I'm opening this up. Is there anyone that's in here saying, do not let that go? Because that's actually pretty strong in my opinion. There's a lot of real meaning to that logo right there. And anything that you see about any of these that you like or don't like?
I like that one.
What this one does, what we were trying to do with what I like about that logo right there is they actually, what the designer did is took the B and the W and designed it in a way that is really strong and memorable. And I think what we try to do in adjusting or moving something forward is stay true to the equity that might be built in that, because everyone's seen that now for years and they're familiar with it. So what I was trying to do is, here we go.
I like the I, except it should say Sandy is watching underneath it.
So, but yeah, that's the reason that B and W, we like to kind of stick with it is just because it's a nice transition from the previous one.
Weren't you talking about using some color in the red?
Right.
So weren't you?
Yeah, eventually if we get this solved, then we show it in a couple colors. Yes?
The one thing I just point out, that you want to do it, I think the Beaches Watch is such, the back here is small letters, so.
Right here?
Unless somebody, unless somebody knows BW, that's a little hard to.
Yeah, we can go larger and type.
Curtis, I think if you married the Beaches Watch under here with that logo, I agree with her. I like the logo.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, but I think you gotta have.
A little stronger with the type. Yeah.
I'm concerned when you want to print it, or if you did it on shirts, it would look unfinished, like that the circle didn't necessarily connect, that it faded out.
This right here?
Yeah.
Good point.
Interesting.
Now you guys know what I go through.
Yeah.
They're right now. I will tell you, there's 167 little study county lines that never even came here.
Come to a 19-member council meeting.
Particular reason we didn't have the website information on that last one you're on?
Typically what happens again, and just not to get into logo 101, but a logo is simply the identity. It's a symbol and then the type. And what you do is, with your materials, you put your website somewhere, for instance, on letterhead, you add your website to the bottom portion of the letterhead. But what you try not to do is complicate a logo. Just think of McDonald's or think of Nike. I mean, just a swoosh and they're done. And eventually, that would be the idea. And there are, I think people are already seeing that oval of that VW. You know, when you drive down the road, you can see that VW from, 100 yards away. And that's what's registering in your mind. And eventually, that's what we like, is people just to see the B and the W and go, oh, Beaches Watch. And we may not have to use type.
Bruce, did you have a comment?
The one Georgette's holding with the W, creating the wave emblem instead of just the stark, stiff letters, and then the Beaches Watch written, the W is the same way there. I think that'd be a great idea to put the Beaches Watch wording with that logo that Georgette's holding, and gives that wave action, which blends right in with the wave that you have around it.
Yeah, it's a nice font. I think it's it fits the beach. It has again, a friendly kind of look to it. And that's what we're shooting for, I think.
So do we want to show of hands and to see who likes which
I
one?
mean, if you want to raise your hand and say we're tracking with that middle one, it sounds like that's what people feel like. It's not a bad direction. This one right here, correct, with some adjustments.
Yeah.
Yes.
You better, Georgette's better looking than you.
All right, thank you. We'll conclude the logo.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Bruce. All right, so
I do
thank you
appreciate
guys.
everyone's involvement. Those aren't
Yeah.
always easy things to do.
Thank
You got a
you.
lot of cooks in the kitchen, you know.
Thank you, Curtis. All right, so now to the highlight of our evening. I'd like to introduce George Forbes, who's the city manager for Jacksonville Beach.
Tonight is very important. I've already been bumped by the logo team. Sandy contacted me 2 weeks ago and said she couldn't find anybody else to give this talk tonight, so would Charlie and I do it. So it's really nice. That's usually the only way I get to talk to anybody, so it's fine for me. We do have some people here that I think everybody should know. Mario Rubio's here. Mario, you want to wave your hand? Stand up. Mario's job with the city of Jacksonville is he's their state person that represents the city of Jacksonville and the county before the state, and he's up there pretty much full-time during the session, so he's a tremendous resource person for us. Dee Alexander, Dee, would you stand up? And Megan from Senator Payne's office. It's kind of an awkward because when I start operating the slideshow, I kind of got to do it backwards to the audience, so I'll do the best I can. It's going to be kind of interactive. I've got several people in the audience that will get parts of this tonight because actually there's a lot going on. But before I start, I want to just talk a little bit about the role of the cities to the state and the federal government. So does anybody here, I don't know if there's any lawyers here that can help us. I know we've got a professor here of public administration someplace that can just talk, just what does the word federalism mean to you? Federalism.
Gives me a chill.
For the purpose of this meeting, Bill, wait till I call. Georgette, do you want to give it a try?
I thought I was just here to hold signs now. Federalism is just think of it as a layer cake. There are 3 levels of government in the United States. You have the federal government, you have the state government, and then you have the local government. The federal government, for the most part, preempts states and locals, and depending on the issue that you're having, but you're going to get into Dylan's rule. I'll stop the lecture there and you can continue.
Thank you. Well, when you talk about federalism, she's exactly right. But the important concept is that in the United States, the Constitution of the United States, it gives certain powers to the federal government. It also gives certain powers to the state governments. And the 10th Amendment to the United States says, and this may shock some of you, that any powers not given to the federal government by the Constitution are powers given to the state. So we're not a unitary system. In a unitary form of government, the federal government's supreme, none of them is a state government, none of them is us. That's not true in the United States. Basically, the federal government and the state government both have supremacy in their areas of powers. So that's the key to federalism over here, okay? It's not unitary. I know that, we could spend a whole session on how do we really operate that way, and I don't want to get into that. But I think it's really critical that you understand this. Where do cities fit in the Constitution of the United States? How does that work? Where do cities fit in? I'm not calling you. Anybody know? Well, actually, cities...
Powers from the state.
Yes, that's exactly right. Mr. Gulford said exactly right. Cities aren't... The powers of cities are not in the Constitution of the United States, not in no place. And so we had a famous lawsuit early in our country's history. There's a rule called Dillon's Rule. What this lawsuit decided was that cities are creatures of the state, and they don't have any more powers than what the state gives them. So when we talk about going up to the state legislature, it's very serious business because, theoretically, I guess they could wipe out all the cities in the state. But basically, there's supposed to be a theory in the United States called home rule. And I'm being honest, I don't think there's any city official in the United States that really thinks that home rule is much in effect in the state of Florida. What home rule, the theory behind home rule is that all the cities should be able to pretty much, the state should certainly set the framework for cities and some basic rules, but basically one size doesn't fit all, and each city ought to have a lot of leeway in how to run its own city. Well, that doesn't necessarily happen every time we have a legislative session, frankly. Our biggest concerns in small Jacksonville Beach's realm isn't what we're going to get from the state, all these great things are going to happen. We're almost always in defensive mode of what we're going to try and stop from happening being done to us. That's normally the mode that we're in. Now think about this for a second. Maybe you not be aware. There are 120 legislators in the House, 120. There are 40 senators, that's 160. And of those 160 people, how many representatives do those of us at the beach have? This is real simple. Two. So 2 out of 160. So basically we got a 160 horsepower machine and we got 2 horsepower maybe. So I'm just trying to say that I keep telling our council, jokingly but also seriously, that, all these years that we do a pretty good job with the state legislature for what we got, which is basically nothing. It's usually you feel like you're with a BB gun shooting at tanks up there at our level. We're very small city. Now, we do have more horsepower in the Duval County delegation. I mean, I've been here a long time, it depends on the years, but I will tell you this last session, two things. The entire Duval County delegation really treated Jacksonville Beach and the beaches extremely well. I mean, I was actually stunned by how well they treated us and how glad they were to see us and how respectful they were of our concerns. It was very, very critical to us. So that was a big help to us. And but the other thing is that again, with only 2 people, unless you have a full-time presence up there, it's very difficult to make a difference. And again, that's just my perspective on things. So with that, though, I just wanted, before we get into our slideshow, I just wanted Dee to just give you a real brief summary on what it takes a bill to become law, because I think you need to understand it. The state doesn't operate in any way, shape, or form like the cities do. I mean, obviously, we've got 5 council members in Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach, 7 in Jacks Beach. You can come to our meeting. We allow you to speak on, actually, any issue at any of the beach cities, any issue is like a public hearing, because we let the public speak on any item all 3 beach cities do on the agenda. It doesn't work that way at the state level. Because you've got so many people, 60 people, the state works primarily by committees, and the committee chairmen are very powerful, and so it works totally different from our city. So I'd like Dee to just give a real brief summary on how a bill becomes law.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dee Alexander with Senator Aaron Bean's office. Since I'm not sure where everybody is as far as their knowledge base when it comes to legislation in Tallahassee, I'm going to start with some of the very basics. Some general facts are, this past session there was 1,811 House and Senate bills that was filed. This includes general bills, local bills, and resolutions. However, there was only 264 bills that actually passed and went to the governor. The Senate districts are 3 times larger than House districts. Thus, we have 40 senators and 120 House members. House members are limited to run 6 bills per session. That does not include local bills. And senators are able to run unlimited amount of bills. I think to date, the most bills that have ever run by one member is in the 80s. I think it's 87 bills in one session. Each bill has to have a companion bill. In other words, if Senator Bean runs a bill in the Senate, someone in the House has to run the same bill. And both bills have to pass both chambers to go to the governor to sign. The legislature meets only once per year to debate issues important to the people of Florida and change state laws. And the only bill required by law to pass is the budget. Everything else can sit and die in messages or on calendar. Where do we get our Senate, our bill ideas from? It comes from a variety of different ways. We get, obviously, from lobbyists. We get a lot of our bills from concerns that are presented to us from local governments, like you guys. And we also get them from individuals that have contacted our office over the years with concerns about different things that have impacted them that they would like changed in law. Once we come up with an idea for a bill, basically it's vetted with our committee staff in Tallahassee. Research is done, pros and cons. The bill is drafted in bill drafting, and then it comes out, reviewed, see if it's what we want, then it's submitted for filing. It then goes to the secretary, it's assigned a number, and then it's put on the internet and available to the general public. While that's going on, of course, we're also looking for a House companion because the same thing has to be done on the other side, in the other chamber. All bills are, once they're filed, it takes anywhere from a week to 2 to 3 weeks to get committee references. A bill can get anywhere from 1 to 6 or 7 committee references. The more committee references a bill is given, we call it the kiss of death, because it is almost virtually impossible to get a bill through 6 or 7 committees. The ideal reference for bills are 3. They're very workable at that amount. Once a bill gets referenced, then the work starts. Staff like myself basically have to work with committee staff and the entities that over the research period we have collaborated with to come up with the idea and the information. We work with all those parties to jump over different hurdles that the committee may present, whereas they have concerns about the legislation. In most cases, the bill will not get heard in committee unless the chairman wants it to get heard. So the chairman plays a very big role in getting or allowing the bill to be heard in his committee. If he allows it to be heard, it gets on agenda, and then if there's any recommended changes, then we do the changes at that time in committee when the bill is heard. Senator Bean or staff will present the bill. The bill is discussed, amended, voted on, and then rolled over, and then we start the process over for the second committee. And that continues until all of the committees are done. The biggest thing we have really against us is time. If you start running out of time, then you have to be creative, and how are you going to get this bill moving and keep it alive? The biggest thing is amend the bill to another bill. Very common process. Or withdraw the bill from committee, especially if it's referenced in appropriations committee and it has no fiscal impact, then it's very easy to get it pulled from that committee. The problem with withdrawing a bill from committee, however, is the withdrawal process normally doesn't start until towards the very end of session. Do you want to wait that late in the process to get your bill moving? So those are all strategic thought processes that has to occur in determining a bill as it goes through the process. When a bill finally either passes committee or gets withdrawn, the bill then is ready for the floor. It's completed all its process, it's been amended to the point where the member is satisfied with it. The meat of the bill and the content of the bill is still there and what you want. So it rolls over to calendar, which is considered like the first reading, public reading or public publishing of the bill. Then it sits there until the bill comes up for special order. Special order is a process on the floor where your bill is up, the bill is read, the member has a chance to amend it on the floor if needed, but this is also where other members get to amend your bill. In other words, if Senator A has a bill that's stuck in committee and he needs to get it moving and you agree to amend his bill to your bill, then he can amend it to your bill on the floor. Hopefully that doesn't happen, because as Maria knows, that's where we developed this term, the train starts. So the bigger your bill is and the more people that jump on your bill while it's on special order, the larger or the increased percentage in your bill dying. So once your bill gets in special order, everything looks good, you've amended it if needed, it's rolled over to third reading. Third reading is again another reading cycle. That's where it's debated and voted on. So it comes up, everything's hunky-dory, the bill gets voted on and passed, it goes to the House. So it gets to the House, and now the House says, we don't like this bill the way you've drafted it, we want to change it. So they in turn, provided that the companion bill is on their calendar and ready to be heard, they will take up the bill, they will make changes, and then they will bounce it back to the Senate. And a bill can bounce several times depending on the time available and how close the end of session is. Bills have been known to bounce 4 or 5 times. But if you're running out of time, decisions really have to be made on whether or not you want to save this bill and agree to whatever the other chamber wants, or you can just let the bill die in messages. There was a lot of bills every year that dies in messages. And then the following year, basically, a lot of those bills resurrect and they get refiled in its latest form. Once it passes both chambers, it goes to the governor for signing. I think he has up to 15 days to sign the bill, or it automatically goes into effect unless he vetoes it. And that's it, in a nutshell.
As you can see, that getting something through the state is a whole lot more complicated than getting something through.
Let me make a comment. I bought some copies. If whoever wants, we'll leave them on the back table of how a bill is processed, as well as the county by county, Duval, Nassau, and surrounding county spreadsheet on all of our budget items, which you might find interesting reading. It's about 12 pages long, Excel spreadsheet.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we're going to start next talking about items we have here that affect the beach.
I hear grunts already. By a very quick way of introduction, most of you know me, I'm Charlie Latham. Besides my stellar education at Fletcher High School, I also received a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Florida in 1980. So I've always been very into this. And as a matter of fact, I worked on Jack Eckert and Paula Hawkins' campaign when Jack Eckert ran for governor in 1980. Ever since then, I've kind of kept my ear to what's going on in Tallahassee. And for the last 15 years, I've been an advocate for the solid waste and recycling industry through the Environmental Industries Association. So I've spent a lot of time, actually the last 13 sessions in Tallahassee, going around and meeting senators, representatives, and lobbyists to make sure that things are going the way we want. The reason I bring that up is this is why George and I are such a great team, is when we go to do this together in Tallahassee, and Harry comes with us, and Tom Taylor's been coming with us as well. It's a mission-oriented event. We go in there knowing what we want to do, and this is one of the big examples. Everybody here knows that we've had a problem with flooding in A1A for a long time. And you may or may not know that the main reason is because it's a state-maintained road. And so it's difficult for us to come in there and spend our own resources and interfere with the state business. So basically what happened this session, twofold. Number one, I serve on your transportation planning organization as a board member representing all 3 Jacksonville beaches. And back in December of last year, I wrote a letter to District 2 DOT Secretary Greg Evans, asked him to reevaluate this for the umpteenth time, and told him that we were really having problems. If you all remember last October, we had some pretty bad rains and some pretty substantial floods, so we took a bunch of pictures and brought that with us as well. And then we went to our Northeast delegation. We don't just go and see Senator Bean and Representative Atkins, but we go see everybody from the Northeast. And we'll go see Senator Thrasher and Doc Renuar. Actually, where we struck gold on this was with Senator Gibson from Jacksonville. When we met with her and explained the problem to her, she was very sympathetic. She took some time to listen to us and actually made some phone calls to DOT State Secretary Prasad. And they asked us to put together some information on what we thought we needed to do to get an engineering study completed. We did that, and then I went back to District 2 Secretary Evans, and lo and behold, he had a whole new attitude. So we're actually moving forward in discussions. George and I are going to be meeting with DOT's District 2 next month, right? The second, actually this next week. And we've made some very good progress. We've asked for a substantial amount of money, I think $600,000 to be put aside for an engineering study. The good news is we're taking steps in the right direction. So we've made some headway after all this time, and a lot of it had to do with the help of Senator Audrey Gibson. So as we continue to work on this, we'll certainly keep you updated. Okay.
Another issue that's been a real concern of cities, and I think Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach have been concerned about this is vacation rentals. I'm sorry, vacation rentals. In the 2011 legislative session, the state legislature preempted local government from regulating vacation rentals if they didn't already have a law in place by June 1, 2011. This is where we talk about home rule and the state preempting us in many, many areas. So bottom line, 2011, they said, if you don't already have a law regulating vacation rentals, have a nice day, you're not going to do that anymore. And I think the state legislature was reacting, maybe Dee can help out, she has any more knowledge than I do, reacting to concerns city had. They were putting a lot of heat on people. It's my understanding in some areas, I don't know of any at the beaches, developers were building huge homes in residential areas. And then just, with maybe 6, 7 bedrooms and just full-time making vacation rentals, and there were parties and everything, problems on the rest of the neighborhood. And so many cities were very upset over this issue. But you have to remember that, one of the laws of physics, for every action, there's a equal and opposite reaction, and just some blowback from the vacation rental industry. So they preempted it. It's got a lot of cities very upset that something needs to be done. So there was several laws considered this year, went through several different editions. Senator Thrasher actually was very helpful trying to get a law passed that would have allowed cities to regulate vacation rentals. And that bill was up there. But the vacation industry fought back so hard that it was watered down, and this is ultimately what passed. So it said that, yeah, you can regulate vacation rentals, but you can't regulate the length of them. But you can regulate any of the causes, problems they cause, which you can already do. So whether this bill really solves the problem very much, I'm doubtful. But this is ultimately what looks like the bill will pass. Anybody, Mario, you or Dee, do you have any comments on this? I think you're right. So she said she thinks I'm right. So
I think a lot of the issue was having some problems in Ponte Vedra, and that's why Thrasher really went through and wanted to get some stuff done on it. But that's the best he could get.
Yeah, that's the best he could do. And that's saying a lot, because Senator Thrasher is a very effective legislature. He tried to make where we could regulate the length of vacation rentals, but that again, there was so much blowback from the industry that he didn't get that far. So vacation rentals, as far as I'm concerned, is still a problem. Again, it gets back to that home rule issue where the state does local governments to regulate certain industries. In this case, I don't think they made a very wise decision.
George, what's the difference between a vacation rental and a regular rental?
Well, most of the vacation rentals we're talking about are basically homes, single-family homes in single-family neighborhoods where somebody has them. They're just letting people come in there on a short, just like weekends and stuff.
Versus the house.
Yeah, just rent, usually even the whole house, and just use it to make money that way. And it's really kind of a commercial use in a residential neighborhood that makes people upset. The next big one, I'm going to actually go down a few slides. The next big one is the St. John's River Ferry. I have to tell you that when this issue came up, Senator Bean's office and Adkins were extremely valuable in helping us save the ferry. But just want to say the ferry, if you take a look at the numbers I have here in 2013, first 11 months, the ferry was operational. You look at the number of people that use the ferry, which is pretty significant. It takes a lot of travel off the roads. In this legislative session, there was a grant for $1 million. There's also a Federal Highway Administration grant of $900,000 made for some more major repairs needed to the facilities. Bill, did you want to say a few more words about the ferry?
Yeah, actually, because of the JTA, we're getting $4.97 million federal grant on the ferry, which will be significant to address the biggest problem we've got, which is the landings. Now, back when the Port Authority was running the ferry, there was a study done and an estimate of cost of doing the 2 landings, and there was a lot of pushback. I've talked to an engineer who's pretty knowledgeable about those things. He thinks that thing was way over-designed and consequently much more expensive than what it needs to be. So we think we're probably pretty close on the dollars. We're close to being able to handle that. That's a big thing. And of course, for those of you that are not aware, can't say the gas tax is passed yet. It passed on a 16-to-1 vote. The mayor can veto it. If he does, we'll have to override his veto. But assuming that we override the veto, should he do that, then the gas tax assures that the ferry will be operated by the JTA for 20 years, the next 20 years. So it's pretty much of a
So
lot.
that's continuing funding for the operational.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is the Admiral, who I've now nicknamed Crescent Benny the Admiral, who's the head of the Ferry Commission, the Admiral and his commissioner negotiating with the JTA as to exactly how to format that. What they want to do is they want to keep the Ferry Commission engaged in some way, and for good reason. Everybody can understand that. We want to have some say-so in how the thing operates in the future, because there's been a tremendous amount of citizen involvement in that. You got ambassadors and all these wonderful things that have happened. So I think the ferry is pretty well set.
And when we were up in Tallahassee, we stopped at the governor's office and we got some words from Adam Hollingsworth on some tips we needed to do to inform the governor about the ferry and continuing funding. We told him about your work on the gas tax. I think that was very helpful in getting the governor's office calmed down, that we were working hard for continuing funding. I also appreciate your leadership on this bill, because without your leadership, we'd be no place.
Thank you. No, the governor did not veto that funding, which was very good, and I did have an opportunity to sit at Beach Diner and talk to him, and part of that was about the ferry, so I think it's pretty much on it. Yes, ma'am.
I have one question about the ferry. What's with the new weekend rates?
Well, fortunately, one of the things that politicians do well is hand it off to somebody else. I'll hand that question off to the Ferry Commission because they're establishing the rates. I don't know. I honestly don't.
Because it's higher on the weekend.
Well, they're trying to recover costs as much as possible.
And I think you have, when they raised the fares before, they saw a pushback as far as ridership. So you try and get that balance between where your fares are and the maximum ridership. And I think they're still playing around with that. But see, again, the good thing about that is you have a volunteer commission that's making those kinds of decisions, and all of them love the ferry and are engaged in the ferry and want to do the right thing. So if they may make a mistake, but I think they're prone to correct it quickly.
Remember too that you can buy a coupon book.
That's right, you can.
The coupons will be honored
on the weekends, exactly. So if you're using it consistently, that's a good point, Mayor. That's why you're the mayor of Jacksonville.
I got to be on that dollar too, as an ambassador too. I got a point on that dollar. And if you do the studies throughout all the ferries in the country, if you know the ferry charges you to go on as an individual, but we didn't charge you if you were in the car. All other ferries charge everyone every day a week. So the Ferry Commission and the Friends of the Ferry felt that the weekends was the most active time. And people at first didn't accept it, but you'd be surprised how many people do accept it now because they want to help the ferry. So it is a kind of interesting.
And you know, listen, let me tell you one quick thing, and I want you to be cognizant of this because I encourage you to, if you run into a city councilman, thank them a little bit. As much friction and conflict, and I've been sometimes in the forefront of that between us and Jacksonville, I want to remind you all that the city council did pass the legislation that I introduced to save the thing for $400 and some thousand and create the Ferry Commission. They then passed which I didn't believe, they wouldn't pass George's fireworks $25,000, but they did pass legislation. They did pass
the mayor's fireworks.
They did pass legislation for $200,000 through a CRA to get a CRA established in Mayport. So and that will help the ferry too if we can revitalize Mayport. So they've been pretty doggone good to the beaches too. And so I beat them up when I get an opportunity or need to, but most of the time.
Well, that gas tax also brought $728,000 a year to Jacksonville Beach for road repair.
And the same thing, that's something else you need to be aware of, is that the gas tax, because it's treated as a county revenue, that passes through the local jurisdictions to Jacksonville Beach. I think Carolyn, I think Atlantic Beach gets $400 and some thousand, if I'm not mistaken. Neptune Beach, 200 and some. And that's very critical to their road and street maintenance and repair and improvement. So that is a factor that didn't come out. I actually purposely didn't make a big deal about it because I figured, here he is doing beach things again. So I left it alone.
We're going to keep on beach things. On the beach theme and the Beaches Watch theme, shore protection projects. Shore protection project is a really big deal. You may not be aware of it, but we actually have really a national award-winning beach protection program. Many of you who are a lot who lived here a lot longer than I can remember when we just had a bulkhead along the beach and not much of a beach at all. And with shore protection, we've really been able to do a fabulous job of increasing the dunes and the dune size, which used to be nothing, and really having a beautiful beach. However, it doesn't come without cost. And the cost is basically about 60% of the cost approximately is funded by the federal government, which, by the way, we don't just dial up 1-800 Beach Renourishment, call the Corps of Engineers and say, get down here next year. It doesn't work that way at all. We have to get the funding in President Obama's budget. We have to get funding in the state budget for the state share. And we also have to, get money from the city of Jacksonville for the local share. So Bill had a good point. Sometimes we beach people tend to look at things for a very narrow lens, but actually the city of Jacksonville does do a lot of really positive things for us. So, for instance, last time around we had about a $10 million beach shore protection project, and it may surprise you on the cost. And of that, the beaches people paid how much? Nothing. Now you can argue with me while we pay federal taxes, we pay state. I hear all that all the time. The truth is that it is a big deal, and it's a critically important program for us. So, in this session, the bill passed. The number one shore protection project in the state is ours, Duval County, and that's $2 million some dollars. And the critical thing is in 2015 we want to get the project designed. In 2016 we want to have another shore protection project. And there's a guy here tonight that knows 100 times more about this than I do, and he's been invaluable to us for the last 15 years, and that's Kevin Bodge. Kevin, do you want to go over this, give an update on the project? So again, this is passed by the state. If not, our whole program craters.
Yeah, thanks, George. I'm Dr. Kevin Bodge. I'm a coastal engineering consultant. I'm with Olson Associates. And I'm the coastal engineering consultant to the city of Jacksonville for the Duval County Shore Protection Project. The city of Jacksonville is the local sponsor for the project. We get input from the beaches community to put the project together, but it's the city of Jacksonville that has to carry the water and assist the Corps of Engineers in doing the project. Contrary to, I think, an article that was run in the Beaches Leader a couple weeks ago, the city of Jacksonville is actually very active in the project. We hold permits for the project, we get the leases for it, we co-design, or I co-design the project with the Corps of Engineers, working with them to make sure the project gets built in what's about a 6 to 7 year interval. We did really well in the legislative session this past year. We got $2 million toward the construction of the project, which again we anticipate will, if all goes well, go into construction in the early summer of 2016. Against that $2 million, probably have to ask for a couple $100,000 more next year. For this next project, I'm anticipating the total state share will be about $2.3 million. The city of Jacksonville will bring about $2.6 million, and the federal government will bring about $8 million to the project. So we have most of the state share in hand. The city of Jacksonville has its money in hand. And Dee mentioned a good thing about where does this stuff come from. Well, when it comes to this state money, the $2 million, we have to compete with about 45 to 60 other beach projects all around the state of Florida. And I write the grant for that thing. It's a tough competition every year, and we rank number one. The $2 million got in there at the last minute, courtesy of the Florida Shore and Beach Preservation Association and their lobbying group called Beach Watch. Beaches Watch, it's called Beach Watch. City of Jacksonville, thanks to the help of Bill, is a member of Beach Watch lobby, $5,000 a year, $5,000 gets to $2 million. We're pretty good rate of return. Thank you, Bill, for getting that. And I can't remember if the beaches cities are members, just regular civic members of Florida Shore and Beach Preservation Association. If not,
we were at one time, but then in talking to you and talking to Bill, we got Duval County to join. So I'm not sure we'll remember where not Duval County is.
And I think that's sufficient, probably, under the circumstances.
The reason I mention it is all of our beaches in the state of Florida are principally managed through the state. We were successful in getting $47 million in state funding, which is good. 30 million is the normal, inflated up to today's level. It's about 47 million. And although that sounds like a lot of money, what is the primary economic engine of the state of Florida? It's beaches. So we have to scrape every year for $47 million, and we really, really rely on the input of the beaches community people like Bill and Charlie and other mayors to do that. Any other questions?
No, and again, I can't say, go ahead.
I flew over the beaches the other day, and I know that the dunes are really important to this whole ecosystem. And I noticed where the outfall pipes are that come out of the streets, those areas are dug out every time there's a storm by tractor. And those areas are really etched out. And it seems like, is there a problem with extending the outfall pipes further so that the dune can still be there to protect?
Yeah, they get filled up with sand. The other problem with it is when you get real high tides, then you take the water from the beach and put it on the street. So we actually reverse the flow in many areas in the city by pumping it to those big outfalls we have on 12th Avenue South and Butler Boulevard. But it gets real tough when you get to the northern part of the city because there's no place to put the water. You also can't just, the pumping is astronomically costly anyway, but then you've got to have a place to treat it. And if you don't have a place to treat it, you can't just dump it in the water. So those are issues we're still looking at, but there's no resolution to that anytime soon. Kevin and I have been discussing that actually.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tough problem all around the state. We try to solve it through many different ways, but it's an extremely expensive problem, especially when you have to reverse the flow. And the problem's been there for a long time, but now that the beach and the dune is in such good shape relative to where it was in the late 70s, you notice it a lot more because there's suddenly a dune and a beach we just get in a road. We just didn't used to get a road before.
And again, it's not a fail-safe either because remember that your nice city manager lives right off the intercoastal waterway and I'm going to flood. Dunes or no dunes, I'm toast. When the big one happens, all of us will live in that area. So.
And the other thing too is sometimes you'll get some pushback where people will say that this is all about taking care of those rich beach people, about renourishing the beach. George mentioned it, and many of you that are older residents can remember a time that high tide would wash up against the seawall. And I can remember people coming to Atlantic Beach or coming to the beach from town with their kids wanting to go to the beach and reaching the steps to go down and realizing there wasn't a beach. They'd driven all the way from town to the beach to go to the beach, but there wasn't a beach. You need to gently remind those on the other side of the ditch that bring that up that that's a county asset. That's for the recreational benefit of everybody, and really more so for the people that have to drive that distance out here to town. If we didn't have a beach, that would be their loss.
Sir, you had a question back
I have a question about, they're talking about when they dredge the river, they're going to put the spoils offshore. Is that going to be a problem in the future with our renourishment and getting the sand? They're talking about putting all the spoils offshore.
We tried that once before.
Well, there's no offshore disposal. No, but the sand
that they're going to talk about them taking out of St. John's, they're going to put it offshore. Is that going to be a future problem for our beach renourishment?
It's a very good question, Trey. The sand we get for our beach renourishment project comes from a borrow source we have, which is 8 miles offshore. It's a very, very good sand source. Now, oddly, the disposal area we have for non-sandy material that gets dredged from the river goes to an offshore disposal site, which is very, very close to that borrow area. So I've been fighting with the Corps of Engineers the last couple of years and saying, excuse me, you're putting this in like really, this dirt really close to our borrow area, and we've got some negotiation back and forth, negotiating some buffers. But this proposed expansion and deepening of the St. Johns River would dump a lot of silt and rock and gravel within a couple thousand feet of our sandbar area. I think we can solve it, but I must say I am extremely worried about it, and it is yet another reason why I have some really serious problems with deepening.
What is that number? When you say a lot, what's that cubic yards number?
Oh shoot, of sand being dredged for the deepening project.
It's billions.
I can't remember, Curtis. It's many millions of cubic yards.
I can't remember. 400? About
400 million.
400 million is what I thought.
And so they don't have enough room for all the, for what they're going to take out of the rivers.
Yeah, they have to expand the disposal area.
George, is the work that the state's going to do on 3rd Street going to remediate some of the pressure on the beach outflow?
It might. It's going to be it's what we call pushing the wet noodle uphill. It's going to do it right. I think we're going to have to look at 2 phases. Phase 1, the state's going to have to repair the system they have now, which has been barely touched for 40 years. then I think the second thing is there's going to have to be a lot of cooperation between the state and the city of Jackson Beach and resources and land and how to figure out how we can, I'd like to try and do it right and do a big project, build that a big stormwater retention area like we have on 12th Avenue South and Miller Boulevard, and try and do it right. But that is that's a huge, probably tens of millions of dollar project. So we've got to get our arm around it first with some sort of preliminary design. So again, Kevin's one of the, like Bill, Kevin's really one of the really people we're so lucky to have here. He lives in Atlantic Beach, and without him we would have been lost on beach nourishment a lot of years ago. We actually, through the efforts of Atlantic Beach and Jim Hansen at the time, we got Kevin involved with beach nourishment when it was really faltering in Duval County, and he's really picked it up. And he's also very nice and does a lot for me as far as when I call him up and have him talk to citizens about their dune protection, everything else. He does a great job in putting up with me and answering questions. So I really appreciate it.
One last comment, George.
Yes, sir.
Next Tuesday at 10 o'clock in City Council Chambers, there's a forum that we've been running on port deepening. We're going to hear from the river keeper, Kevin. I think you're going to be there. And it's just an open forum, both sides of the issue. If anybody wants to come, this is a point that you brought up that hasn't been discussed yet, but it's certainly an issue, I think, in there. So maybe we'll discuss that too, Kevin.
Great, Kevin. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, I've been wondering all day how I'm going to tap dance around this one. Police and fire pensions. Let me start out with some really great news. The city of Jackson Beach has just within the last week negotiated pension reform with all three of our unions, tremendously dropping our unfunded liability, and I think we have a tremendously solid program worked out for the foreseeable future. It doesn't mean there won't need to be changes in the future, but for now, as far as I can see, I think we're looking really good with all of our pensions, and that's pretty rare that the cities and the unions will be able to do it. We had 15 meetings with our police union. Union 15 was kind of rough sledding at the beginning, but at the end, everybody decided that we had a deal that, honestly, the deal that the council approved on Monday night. There's one thing in it I don't particularly like. There's things in there that the police don't particularly like, but everything we can both sides live with. And I think that's the art of sometimes getting a good deal. We both got things, I got what I had to have, they got what they had to have, we got a good deal overall for the citizens, keeps the plant sustainable. However, we do have statewide a major problem. And let me try and explain some of the history behind this. The state of Florida was real concerned many years ago, I really can't give the exact year, that there weren't any pensions at that time for policemen or firemen. So they started this program of a small percentage of what you pay for your casualty insurance goes into a fund that helps pay for a pension program for policemen. It's actually about 0.085 of what you pay for casualty service and premiums goes into a fund to pay for police pensions. The same thing for property for firefighters. A very small percent of what you pay in your property insurance goes into a fund for firefighters. Now, this fund is voluntary. The city of Jackson Beach, if they want to, or any of the cities could say, pound sand, we don't want your money, we wouldn't take it. Although that would be kind of silly because the net result of this money is for both to us per year is around $350,000 plus or minus. So it's a pretty good chunk of change. However, like anything, when you're accepting money for somebody, they pose some regulations on how to use it. And it certainly makes a lot of sense to say you've got to use this money for police and fire pensions. No one's arguing with that. The problem's been in 1999, the legislature in their wisdom passed a bill, and it said that you could only use these cities for extra benefits. And they defined extra benefits as more than what the general employees were getting. And therein started a big fight that is still not resolved. And so, I'm trying to be behind you here. So that's the whole issue we have is the extra benefits provision. So in 1999, they had the extra benefits provision. Ever since that time, there's been massive disagreements between the cities and the unions what that means. There's been several reinterpretations of how we can spend that money. And this year, in the last 2 sessions, there's been several bills that have been floated that the city of Jackson Beach and the other cities in the state of Florida have violently opposed. And this session, we did our checking ahead of time, and we were told by heavy hitters in the Senate that this bill was going, the pension bill was being proposed, which we didn't like was going nowhere. Well, that's good with me, you know, I'm fine with that. I'd rather have no bill than one I think is going to hurt us more than we already have it. So then Charlie and I went down here, went to Tallahassee, and we said, no, nothing's happening. Well, no sooner did we get home, and we found out, oh yeah, there's a big pension bill moving. We're saying like, what? How come nobody told us about it? Well, apparently what had been happening during the session, and I got to give the state legislature a lot of credit for this. The state legislature said, look cities, and look unions, we're tired of you guys complaining and fighting each other all the time. Why don't you guys go sit aside and find a bill that you can agree to, and then we'll go ahead and adopt it. But we're tired of getting in the middle of this. Now, frankly, I think that's a very good idea, you know, as for them to kind of step outside and you guys negotiate a package. Well, unbeknownst to us, we were told, no, the biggest cities who was doing negotiations, they agreed to a package with the unions, and I'm not sure it was a good or bad package, but I can tell you this, there was nobody on both sides that could explain what it meant. It was a very convoluted bill, and basically it said that, the good thing about the bill is it said that if the police and fire unions in the city negotiate this, it's legal. They can do whatever you want as long as both sides agree on how to use those monies. That's a good thing, no problem with that. But it also had provisions in it that if you can't agree, and here's where the rub was, if you can't agree, it had a lot of convoluted options if you couldn't agree on how the money would be spent that was pretty hard to understand. And, you know, I kind of hate to have to go through a bill in the last minute that's thrown out there that I don't even understand and that I'm supposed to support. So the bottom line, though, is in the Senate, I won't get too much into the story because it gets kind of convoluted. In the Senate, we had one point of view on that they liked the pension bill that was passed. In the House, they liked the pension bill that was agreed to by the fire union and the police unions also. But there's a second pension system called FRS, which is the state pension system. And the Speaker of the House wanted that system revised. And so he threw the bill for the non-state systems like ours into the bill for the state systems for pension reform, so it never passed and never went anywhere. So I think that's as convoluted a way as I can put it. Dee, did you have a better way to put it? And when I talk about this 1999 bill, Jacksonville is not included in that, because Jacksonville at the time in 1999 and the bigger cities were very clever, and they said if you had a pension in place before 1930 or 37, that you were out of this bill. It didn't include you. It was very kind of them because, you know, they sort of shafted everybody else in the state with this bill but themselves.
The wording is we're deemed to comply.
Well, thank you. That just makes me feel so much better.
Just so you get it right.
So anyway, thank you. So anyway, I didn't know what to say, so the bill didn't pass, so this whole convoluted issue is in the air. You read about it in the papers from time to time. The whole issue is, we call these chapter monies, FRS 175, 185. The real issue is, you know, the cities want that extra benefits taken out of it and be able to use it. So many cities' pensions are in trouble today. I don't think ours is right now. We're in pretty good shape, but so many cities throughout the state of Florida and the nation are in trouble, and we think it makes more sense to be able to use that money to pay off unfunded liability on the pensions and for extra benefits that cities can't afford. The unions, if they were here, would take obviously a totally opposite point of view, and that's to be understood, but somehow we got to get something to make sense in the state of those monies. So, any questions on that? And again, the good news is, a very rare thing for a city to be able to negotiate pension reform with all their unions. We did it.
George, how's that money being spent right now in Jacksonville Beach?
Well, complicated question, but the bottom line is with the reform that we just passed with the police, we're able to get about $400,000 to pay down the unfunded liability. So, so that's a big deal.
George, just as important to my existence, besides the police and fire department, are the guy that makes the water come out of my faucet, or the guy that makes the electricity turn on when I flip the switch. Why is it that we're always hearing about police and fire and never about the rest of the city?
Well, I think we are hearing about the other city employees are all important. I think that, I think the honest answer, which I hesitate to give, is the police and fire unions have a lot more political horsepower than the general police. That's the honest answer. And they see them, the police and firemen see themselves in a role where they would tell you this, that they risk their lives for people every day, and so they deserve a higher benefit level than the other employees. That's what they would tell you. And I said it very respectfully. That's what they would tell you.
We also got the general employee done pretty early in the process too, so there wasn't as much discussion about it publicly.
Well, I think he's talking in general,
Oh,
not
okay.
just... Okay, anyway. That's an unresolved issue. Charlie, and I'm glad to see Cindy Funkhauser. Hey, Cindy.
How much time is that? We're running out of time. Okay, we need to do the Reader's Digest version. I got a bunch of heroes in the room, one of them is Cindy. Homeless was an issue for us, substantial to consider, and what we were going to do to get it under control. Got a lot of props going to Cindy, a lot of props going to Lori Anderson over at the Mission House. They're doing a tremendous job. And Cindy really put her shoulders down and carried the load on this CHOP program, the Chronic Homeless Offenders Program, which the City Council in Jacksonville Beach approved a month ago. And so we're working in conjunction with the Jacksonville Initiative to identify chronic offenders, take them before a judge, and basically they get the opportunity to either voluntarily submit to an extensive rehabilitation program of about 6 months. And if they, is that about right?
It's actually longer than 6 months.
Okay, a little longer than 6 months. But they go through this rehabilitation program. If they withdraw from the program or anything of that nature, they go back to the judge and they're assigned to a much steeper penalty than your standard penalties that have been given for some time. So one of the things that we lobbied for or advocated for in Tallahassee this year when we were there was there was some grant money that was going to be, that was on the table for homeless issues. And we're very happy and that it was successful and allocated to the budget, and this money is going to be distributed over different programs and hopefully will be used in conjunction with what Cindy has done. Cindy has really done, she carried this load herself and did a tremendous job, so a little round of applause for Cindy.
I'm going to try to wrap this up, just give me about 5 minutes very quickly. Did you say there was a question, Chief? I'm sorry. Yeah.
George, I have a quick question because you mentioned it several times today, and I hear it from different cities, especially here at the beaches. I hear the topic of home rule. And you talk about everything that you talked about here, the pensions and things like that affects home rule. My question is when we support home rule, I understand the League of Cities when they come up with a resolution, they want the city to support them overall. But why do cities say in one breath they support the home rule, but in the other they take small interest groups that talk them into doing resolutions to support bills in the legislature that will never come to committee or will never come out of committee? Aren't we sitting, who makes those decisions? Does the city managers, I'm not pointing you guys.
Oh, the city managers never make any bad decisions.
What I'm saying is, when those things are done, do people think as a city manager they affect the different things? Because it's got to affect the legislature saying, well, one minute you say you want home rule, the next thing you want this out of committee, and it will affect every city, just because a small city likes it.
It's hard to answer that question on a theoretical basis. I mean, I think it's very appropriate for any city to send a resolution to the state to ask the state to pass legislation that's really in the state realm and not in the local realm. The legislation you're talking about really, to be effective, would have to be effective on the state or even the federal level, not a local level. I think a local level, small city passing that it would be very difficult to enforce. To be done, that would have to be done on a state or federal level. That's my answer to that, the best I can. Then I'm going to kind of go quickly because there are some critical issues that I want you to understand. We'll go quickly here. Tourism, the governor, in his budget, he increased by $36 million in money to go to visit Florida tourism. We think that's a good thing. We supported that because that's one of the, of course, limitations of the state. Backyard gun range regulation. It may surprise you, more and more people in Jacksonville Beach are, that just a few years ago, the state passed legislation that said that cities can't, we don't regulate guns or ammunition or anything like that. And that's not the worst part. This is a particular case in Monroe County. Monroe County, somebody built a backyard gun range, and Monroe County's mad because they say the state law says they can't stop it. I don't agree with this newspaper article, by the way. It may surprise the lady in the back room. There are numerous times I don't agree with newspaper articles. I think this newspaper article is wrong because I think this is a zoning issue. I think we certainly can't stop somebody from putting a gun range back out. However, I want to point out there was a gun range in Jackson Beach. We tried to shut it down, we went to court, and we lost. Because it's very difficult for cities to regulate gun ranges that are already existing or or weapons. Now, let me go on, because it's already, yeah, we get back to home rule. The state legislature, just a few years ago, totally preempted us. They said that we can't pass any rules that have to do with guns or where you carry them or anything else. And so take a look at legislature declares that it is occupying the whole field of regulation on firearms and ammunition. And in any city that's got regulations on it, look at that last sentence, they're null and void. That's what we talk when I talk about home rule. I mean, this infuriated us.
Mention also the $5,000 fine for any...
I'm kidding.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't rush it. So when you look at this one, it says, any that violates it, regulation shall be allowed to set forth for it. It says $5,000 fine, but that's not really the worst of it. The worst of it is, it says that if I take the advice of my attorney, and I tell Colette back there that she can't shoot in our city, that I can't use the advice of my attorney as a defense, and I can be sued personally. I mean, it's a really, really harsh law. I complained about it to you at the legislature. They don't really care about my opinion on that particular issue. So we just go back. I want you to know that we have people like complaining about shooting duck hunters and stuff this year in certain neighborhoods, and we told them we don't regulate that. See the state. A couple other quick things. I just want, your own opinions. We need to be concerned. There are bills coming up each year on casino gambling. Mainly South Florida wants casino gambling real bad. I can see it all now. Jacksonville Beach, nude sunbathing and casinos. Anyway, by the way, I'm not mentioning or not listening to any more of your jokes on the nude beach stuff. But anyway, I mean, it should be a concern of ours. It should be a concern of ours, and I don't see it as a moral issue, but I do see it as there's only so much money people have for discretionary spending. They're spending on gambling, they're not spending on other things, and so I just want you to think about that, because this is a big issue. The big casinos out of Vegas and all, they are pushing this more and more and more in the state, and ultimately I'm concerned they'll be more successful. But, so gambling, remember Miami, if you take a look at this, the city of Miami especially, Los Angeles Sands, and some Malaysia companies are really looking into that. I'm jumping ahead of myself here on it. Medical marijuana, there was a bill passed that medical marijuana, as I understand, is already legal in the state of Florida up to a certain extent. Go ahead, Charlie, you want to just say a word with that?
I just got a little feedback from Senator Bean. He said that there's a referendum go to the ballot. Senator Bean's against it. It's too loosely written. The way it's currently written, that a college student could claim that the stress was too much and get a doctor's permit to get marijuana. What they're trying to do is modify it so that it's a THC extract. It's like a liquid drop, and they want to focus primarily on children with seizures. So that's the intent. But right now there is a referendum.
Can you imagine the city manager and city council members smoking marijuana for a council meeting? It would be even worse than it is now.
More things that get done.
More things get done.
Boy, I might disagree with you on that.
That's another subject we can discuss another time. 75-mile-per-hour speed limit, as you may know, the law passed allowing the 75-mile-an-hour speed limit. It wasn't mandatory. It said the state could have them on our major highways. The governor vetoed it, so that's not something we have to be concerned about. Personally, I did not think it was a very good idea. And then turkeys, we don't have time to get in there. Turkey is there's about $70 million in discretionary funding that are bills for special areas. Duval County got a share of that. One thing I always touch on is one person's turkey is always another person's good project. I would personally define a turkey as any money given to a group that doesn't meet a state objective. We've got a list here if you want. There's a list of all that money that was given out on the back table. So if you want a list of something there. Duval County did okay with the special projects. Obviously South Florida is more powerful. They get more, but we did get some good local projects. So with that, Mario can talk to you about some of the local projects here if you want to. And
one last comment. We're very successful. We had a successful session. We didn't do it on our own. We had tremendous help from Senator Bean, Janet Atkins, and we're very fortunate a lot with our success in the beaches also because of Bill Gulliford's leadership.
That looks awful for a minute ago.
Yeah, I was going to say that. You think that was an accident?
Don't tell new beach jokes to my wife. That's it.
All right.
Thank you, George.
So thank you all very much. We appreciate
We made it.
George and your sideshow that you brought with you and everything. Yeah, it was great. It was a really good meeting. We want to remind everybody, July 2nd is the next Beaches Watch meeting, and that will be the Beaches Budget 101. Yes, sir?
Thank you, sir.
Here and there to Beaches Watch when it first started with the height limit, and it's in the paper, it's been talked all around. I just wanted to know how Mayor Latham feels about it.
No, I got it. During the process of our evaluation of how to move forward with the hospitality network, a survey was conducted to spark discussion. I want to reemphasize that the surveys are in, I think we've got 66 of them back.
Yes.
And there's absolutely zero intention to use that to quantify a momentum. All we want to do is use it to spark discussion. So there is no plan to readdress the height limit. We did it to spark discussion only. If it does come up in discussion, we all know how it has to proceed. It's not something that we can do behind closed doors or bring up to a vote. So there was really, I thought George did an excellent job of putting questions in the survey just to spark discussion.
Yes. Well, I told Sandy before the meeting that issue was going nowhere, honestly, that, anyway, it's a long story how this all started up, but I'm pretty much the cause of it. I was asked a question in a meeting with businesses, we were talking about parking, and I told them I really thought we needed downtown was more hotels. They came up with how we can get more hotels with 35-foot height limit, and I said, I think that's something we should put on the table and discuss. And now, I was out of that meeting 10 minutes, I got a call from Kathy Bailey, 12 minutes, Sandy Copeland, and basically I just denied it all, so I got out of it. Anyway, but I don't see that issue go, very honestly, when you look at the survey results, I think you can find that issue's going nowhere. I just don't think it has the community support. I still believe, as Sandy well knows since before the vote, that I think it should be 50 feet in the downtown, but I don't think there's any community support for that. And that's one of the reasons, again, we're trying to spark discussion with the survey. Now, what we're going to do, for those of you that attended that meeting on our downtown hospitality, is we haven't even really gone through the results. We're going to take the survey results by question and by comments, because we're learning a lot more from the comments than by the question. We're going to put in these 6 categories that we put in that were suggested by Jim Peters. We're going to suggest action plans for the 6 categories. We're going to then meet with our team again, which is everybody we invited to the last meeting, come back, discuss that with them, and we'll probably have several meetings before we decide where we go from here. So that's what's going to happen. But the 35-foot height limit, from what I can tell, is absolutely going to go nowhere.
How about the best of both worlds, a high-rise parking structure?
Pardon me?
How about the best of both worlds, a high-rise parking structure?
You can just start on. Jim, I hear your Segway's being ticketed.
Okay, thank you all for coming tonight, and we'll see you July 2nd. Thank you.